When Carl Jung first proposed the idea of the collective unconscious, many of his colleagues thought he had stepped outside the boundaries of science and into the realm of mysticism. He had not. What he had done was follow the evidence further than anyone before him was willing to go, and what he found there would permanently alter the landscape of modern psychology. To understand the collective unconscious, you first need to understand its counterpart, the personal unconscious. Freud had already mapped this territory. The personal unconscious contains everything you have forgotten, repressed, or failed to consciously notice. Memories too painful to hold in awareness, desires too threatening to acknowledge, experiences that slipped below the threshold of attention. It is personal because it belongs to you and only you. Its contents are shaped by your individual life history. Jung accepted this much. But as he worked with patients, analyzed thousands of dreams, and immersed himself in the comparative study of world mythology, religion, alchemy, and folklore, he kept encountering something that the personal unconscious alone could not explain. Patients who had never studied mythology would produce dream imagery strikingly similar to ancient mythological themes. Symbols that appeared in medieval alchemical texts would surface spontaneously in the dreams of modern patients with no knowledge of alchemy. Children would describe fears and fantasies that matched, with uncanny precision, motifs found in cultures they had never encountered. Jung's conclusion was bold. There must be a layer of the unconscious that is not personal at all, not built from individual experience, but inherited. A kind of psychic substrate common to all human beings, formed over the vast stretches of evolutionary time during which our ancestors faced the same fundamental challenges: birth and death, the sun and darkness, the mother and the father, the hero and the monster. This shared substrate he called the collective unconscious. The collective unconscious does not contain memories in the ordinary sense. It does not store the specific experiences of your ancestors. What it contains instead are predispositions, tendencies to perceive, feel, and respond in certain ways when confronted with universal human situations. These predispositions Jung called archetypes, primordial patterns that organize psychic experience. The archetype of the great mother, the archetype of the hero, the archetype of the trickster, the archetype of the wise old man. These are not images in themselves, but rather the potential for certain images, which take on culturally specific forms depending on the individual and society involved. The evidence Jung gathered for the collective unconscious was wide and varied. He pointed to the remarkable consistency of mythological themes across isolated cultures, what the scholar Joseph Campbell would later call the monomyth. He pointed to the spontaneous emergence of alchemical and mandala symbolism in patient dreams. He pointed to what he called the amplification method, the observation that a single dream symbol, when explored across world mythology and religious traditions, consistently carries related meanings, regardless of which culture one consults. The collective unconscious also explains why certain stories, certain images, and certain figures strike us with a power that seems disproportionate to their surface content. When a story resonates at a mythological level, when it touches something so deep it feels both personal and ancient at once, you are feeling the pull of the collective unconscious. Great art, great literature, and great religion all draw from this reservoir. They speak not only to the individual but to something older and broader in the human being. Critics have challenged the concept on multiple grounds. How can something be inherited without being genetically encoded? Jung was careful to distinguish between the inheritance of specific content and the inheritance of structural tendencies, just as the human eye is built to perceive light without coming preloaded with any specific image. The collective unconscious, on this view, is more like an anatomical feature of the psyche than a library of pre-stored memories. For Jung, engaging with the collective unconscious was not merely an academic exercise. It was a therapeutic and spiritual necessity. When individuals are cut off from these deeper layers, when they live entirely on the surface of conscious life, they feel a peculiar kind of emptiness, a loss of meaning that cannot be filled by achievement or pleasure alone. Contact with the archetypal dimension, through dreams, creative work, myth, or active imagination, restores a sense of depth and connection to something larger than the individual self. Subscribe to Psychology Theories Explained to explore more of the ideas that shape the modern mind.